Hello, everyone. It's good to have you here. I'm so glad you've joined us. We have a great training for you today. I'm Rita Wolfson. I'm the founder of Financial Social Work, and our speaker today on Till Death Do Us Part is Dr. Olga Osby. She has done some trainings for us in the past. She's always very popular and she always gives us great information, and she can tell you more about herself when I turn it over to her. First, just let me remind you, if you haven't been with us before, that there could be messages in the chat box for you. The slides aren't shared, they are proprietary. This recording will be on our website, Facebook page, and YouTube channel within a few days. If you have questions, type them in the question box, and we'll answer as many as time permits. There are no CEs or certificates of attendance for this webinar, just a lot of great content that you really need to know, and I'm so excited about it. I'd like to start with our financial social work affirmation that goes just for today. I will love myself enough to face my fears, practice self-acceptance, and embrace hope. Just for today, I will silence my inner critic, speak my truth, and make peace with myself and with my past. I will give myself permission to eliminate toxic people, beliefs, and behaviors from my life. And just for today, I will prepare for a better tomorrow by healing my relationship with my money and with myself. I think that very much captures what my work is all about. I encourage you, since we will be talking about some topics that aren't always easy to think or talk about. So one is money and one is dying. So let's all take a deep breath in and slowly release it. And one more time. So I did want to do a poll on does the American dream still exist? But since I did not get that in, we will just continue and learn more about financial support. So no one chooses to have money problems, but we know that most people do. Here we are. Money is always the elephant in the room because it's about so much more than dollars, cents, debt, math, budgets, and crisis intervention. So financial social work is the reason we're here. We do these monthly free webinars and certifications and all kinds of wonderful things. But you need to know that it is the intersection of social work, politics, the economy, gender, economic, and social justice, and all financial inequity. That's what we're about. We explore the fundamentals of financial health, those thoughts, feelings, attitudes, beliefs, experiences, and values. It is heavily psychosocial because it are those thoughts, feelings, attitudes, etc., that drive our financial behavior, which is how we earn, spend, save, share, and borrow. It's very much a behavioral model because until and unless behavior changes, nothing changes. At its very, very core and heart, it is about healing the relationship we each have with our money and the relationship we have with ourselves. Only when we feel better about ourselves, more deserving and positive and hopeful, will we do the work required to improve those relationships. Financial social work model is interactive, reflective, strengths-based. It's educational, motivational, and supportive, holistic, multidisciplinary, and healing. And it's successful with individuals and with groups. The process is, I can never say it too much, about healing our relationship with money, which means recognizing and taking ownership of our financial health, and healing that relationship with self, which is about self-discovery, self-care, and self-healing. Here we are in 2022. This is actually our 25th year of doing this, and we will be having some celebrations over the course of the year. And you can see that while we certainly have thousands of graduates in this country, we also have graduates around the world: China, Iceland, Canada, Japan, Finland, England. Pretty exciting work. And now it gives me great pleasure to turn this over to Dr. Osby. Let me go ahead and change the presenter. Okay. Yes. Did you get that, Olga?
Yes, I did. I just need to change my screen so that you all can see that, my PowerPoint.
Well, I like your ducks in a row.
Well, let me do it this way to get my PowerPoint together and change a few things over, and then we can get started. Yeah, but I love my ducks. It keeps me close to nature. And just a reminder that spring's coming. Let me start the slideshow. Okay, hi, Zach. Can everybody see the slideshow?
But I think because you're working on two screens, we see.
Okay, I know what I need to do. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, great. All right, well, I want to thank everybody for coming today and being part of this discussion, because I know that this is a hard topic for a lot of people in terms of really getting to see and that this is a major part of what we need to do around financial planning. And so I hope to be able to walk people through that today and address some of the fears and concerns and the myths that people have about this, and really talk about what we need to do and to make this really a part of our lives. Okay. Rita, is this a good screen for everybody?
Perfect, and it's beautiful too.
Very good. Well, why this webinar? And some people may raise their eyebrows, and some people may go yes and need to hear about this. But I just think it's so important that we change our attitudes and behaviors around death and dying, that we promote estate planning as a part of overall financial planning. I think that that's crucial for us to think about in our own lives, but also for those of us who are doing financial social work and counseling, to really get people to see that estate planning is really, really important to their overall financial health and well-being. To help us learn how to prepare in advance for financial, healthcare, and legal matters that's needed in hand before there's an illness and before there's a passing of someone in the family, and to understand that death is part of living, and it can be just as expensive. So we need to prepare for that as well. And as I go through this, I hope to share some insight in terms of just how expensive it is and why people can't start planning too early for this process. But first thing I want to do is conduct a poll. And let me pull the poll up. But the poll question, okay, for some reason it's not coming up. Okay, I see where. Okay, the first poll question.
Olga, do you want me to start this poll?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Can you all see it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. The first poll question is, as of 2021, what percentage of Americans between the ages of 18 to 34 stated that they have a will or another estate planning document? And so so elections are 10%, 15%, 25%, or 30%. And I see that people are taking the poll. And we're almost at 70. Okay. Give it another second because people are really taking the poll. Fantastic.
I know. We have great participants, don't we?
This is wonderful. Okay. It looks like we're at about 70. Oh, okay. We're almost at 85%, and fantastic.
It is. Okay, let's see what people thought.
Okay. All right. Let me close the poll and share the results. And about 70 of you thought about 10% of people ages 18 to 34 may have a will or some kind of estate planning document. 27% thought about 15%. C, 2%, thought it was 25%. And actually, the answer is 25% of Americans between the ages of 18 and 34 stated they have a will or another estate planning document. So that's good in terms of, it's a lot more than most people thought, but it's still bad because that means 75% do not. Right. So there's some work to do in this area, okay? So let's talk a little bit about why people do not pre-plan for death. And the reasons that most often are given in terms of people putting off preparing a will is that they don't know how to get started with preparing a will or starting estate planning, which is what this webinar is all about. People do tend to procrastinate. I know I did that for several years. I kept saying, I got to get a will. I got to do my trust. I need to put everything in place. You just keep putting it off. So, but this year I was determined I was going to stop putting it off. And I just finished having my will and trust set up. Other people think that it's too expensive to set one up. So that's another reason why I just don't do it. Well, common beliefs that people say as to why they don't need a will is they figured out, my spouse, or I would even put my partner or, family members would automatically inherit and settle estate. That's not true. They did not have enough assets to make a will, and that is really not true. Everybody should, have something in place, and we'll talk the reasons why in a minute. Or they really believe, and this is the one that's almost funny to me, making a will means you're preparing to die. And true enough, a friend of mine said that to me just a couple of weeks ago. She's probably listening and probably kill me afterwards, but so I'm not going to say her name. But I was like, no, it has nothing to do with that. But it's almost like if I think it is going to happen, nah. So, those are just some of the common myths that people get into. And one of the things that I think is really interesting for us to acknowledge is that it's not just common everyday folk who end up not doing this process of preparing a will. Here are 10 famous people who died without a will. And some of the lists may be a little surprising. Sonny Bono, for those of you who know Cher's ex-husband. Pablo Picasso, the famous artist, his works go for millions of dollars. Prince, who I was a huge fan of. And you think about his music collection, died without a will. Kurt Cobain and James Brown, two famous singers. Heath Ledger, a famous actor. Howard Hughes died without a will, and which is astounding to me because I know he had mental health problems towards the end of his life, but before then he didn't have a will in place. That's astounding. Unfortunately, Martin Luther King Jr., John Denver, and even Abraham Lincoln, a famous attorney and president of the United States, died intestate without a will. And I looked it up, and only about 4 presidents in history have passed away without a will, and Abraham Lincoln was one of them. So I just think it's important that we recognize this. I was telling Rita that, when Aretha Franklin passed away, people thought she died without a will. Well, it turns out one of her sons found the will that she had made out, but it was under the seat cushion in on the sofa in the living room. What the heck that was about, I have no idea. So for your will and those that you work with, tell them, don't do the seat cushion in the sofa. Put this in a place that, people can find it, they know what's going on, and have it even go through an attorney office as well, because they will keep copies of your will also. So I just thought that was interesting. Let's launch the second poll that I have here. The second poll is, what do you think is the amount of time an average modest estate can take to get through the probate process? Okay. So if you die without a will, it will have to go through probate court. So how long do you think that takes? Oh, I'm seeing some interesting answers here.
I love that our attendees came to participate, right?
I tell you, this is fantastic.
It is.
Oh, very good. Okay, we have 80.
Thanks, everybody.
I'm so pleased with this. Okay, we have about 83%. So let's close the poll and share the results on this one. So the answers were between 3 weeks to 2 months, 4 months to 1 year, 6 months to 2 years, and 8 months to 3 years. Actually, it really is 6 months to 2 years if you die without a will and it has to go through probate, excuse me. When my father died, there were all sorts of issues with my dad's estate, including the fact that we lived in Louisiana and we were waiting for a new law to come into effect in Louisiana. So my attorney had us delay, actually filing for the estate. That took me almost 4 years. It was over 3 years. So, things just get bogged down in the process if you don't have something in order, something in place, so people won't have to go through that horrendous situation, because it just caused a lot of stress, trust me, okay? So I'm gonna hide this result and go on to the next issue here, which is the percentage of Americans who were motivated by COVID-19 to engage in estate planning. The last 2.5 years since COVID, bombarded us, there's been a lot of deaths and a lot of family having family members pass on. So what has been the impact of that in terms of seeing all this illness and death? Well, 24% of the people said that they saw a greater need to do some estate planning, and it caused them engaged in the process. But look at this, 11%, those are the procrastinators, say they see a greater need, but they haven't taken further action around that. But look at this whopping 65% who don't see a greater need and haven't taken any further action. So as I said, there's still a lot of work that needs to take place along this. Because what I always view in terms of, going through this process is that there are waves of financial emotional trauma that's associated with this. The first wave, if you will, is if the person was ill or had a long illness, you're dealing with the medical bills. And for families, that in itself can be just totally, completely overwhelming and cause a great deal of financial trauma. Just dealing with the bills, let alone all the emotional and physical and mental issues that they're going through around this person's illness. And then the second wave is if the person passes. And so you have that second wave of financial trauma from the cost of the funeral and burial. And this financial trauma, this second wave, can bring on enormous economic devastation that's going to rip through a family for years, okay? And so that's the worst time to engage in, decision-making, particularly financial decision-making in terms of what needs to take place next in terms of, the family members, the friends, what to do with the estate. And I've been through this several times, selling my dad's estate, selling my oldest brother's estate, watching my sister-in-law settle my second brother who passed away estate, It's a lot that takes place. And yeah, that's a lot of emotional financial decision making that could be really bad. And so, you want to engage with family members, because no one's really comfortable talking about the what ifs when it comes to around the end of life. And so that adds on to that stress. But, these conversations can really help avoid those emotional decision making when people are at the most at risk of making costly mistakes. And so there are a number of steps that families can take to begin this process. And this is where I think we really come into play here in terms of as financial social workers. They have to form a plan, to inform a family member or a friend about their plans, clearly write out wishes. What is it they want to happen, in case something happens to them, and consult an attorney about a will and our trust to ensure that proper passing of land and other family property is in place. And that's going to lead to less stress later on and not cause people then still have to go through, going through attorney and suing and all of that. A lot can happen in terms of that. So let's look at this third poll. And I am so grateful for you all being so active and participating in this. But the third poll is, at what age should someone make a will? What do you think? How early should someone start thinking about making out a will? Oh, I'm loving these numbers. Excellent. Okay, great responses. We're over 75%. Okay. I'm impressed with this audience.
I know, me too.
Oh, wow, 70, we're at 80. Give you another little second here. Okay, I think we're at it. Let's close this poll and look at the results. 48% said 18, and I am extremely impressed because that's exactly right. That's the age when someone should begin making out a will, and I think even these early ages, other ages, 21, 25, 30, those are important, but a lot of people would not get that. So, Rita, you have a very intelligent and smart audience tuning in here every month. That's why I try to join in so I can be with this crowd. Okay. So, but
thanks everybody.
Yeah, thank y'all for participating on this. So, why should young people have a will? And starting as early as 18, where if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. At 18, some of are already a single parent. They're just getting married or in a committed relationship or starting a family. If they're a member of an LGBTQ community, it's important in terms of, for their family and members, because laws are not always friendly towards this particular community. And this is one group that I would love to see more of in terms of estate planning. And we'll talk about issues around healthcare as well, because sometimes partners get left out, unfortunately. And so, that needs to be addressed. They're entering the military, they're beginning to earn money and contributing towards retirement. That money needs to go somewhere. You may be asked to fill out for beneficiaries, and we'll talk about that more, but that's a really important piece of it. They may receive an inheritance. They may have animals and beloved pets that they want to make sure that something, what happens with them if something happens to them. Protect family from having to go through probate, protect social media and other online accounts. This is particularly, I think, concerning for a lot of young people who are part of this generation that is, so much of their lives are online. And so that needs to be taken care of. And then inform others of who you want to leave money or possessions. It could be a charity, it could be special friends, certain items that you want to go to certain people. All of that needs to be written down and clearly, discussed as well. So let's look a little bit at estate planning. It involves determining how an individual's assets will be preserved, managed, and distributed after death, or in the event they become incapacitated. And it's more than just making a will. It's also setting up a trust if there's land or other property that that they have or will receive through their inheritance. Making charitable donations to limit estate taxes is definitely part of naming an executor of the estate and any beneficiaries, and setting up funeral arrangements, okay? And so that first step in terms of making a will, the will is a legal document that provides instructions on how an individual's property and custody of minor children, if any, should be handled after death, okay? And if you just look at this picture of this lovely family, what I always think about with a lot of families is that most families do not really have savings, and they have no plans for the death of a family member. And COVID really resulted in not only deaths of so many family members, but multiple family members dying at or around the same time. I mean, some of the stories have been heart-wrenching. Heart-wrenching. And they also have been talking about how many children have become orphans due to parents passing away with COVID. So that's one of the things that we have to think about. But as I like to remind people as well, people die of other things other than COVID. And so it's not just because of what we're experiencing on such a mass scale now. We need to think about this in terms of other issues and things that may happen within families as well. But in most families today, there's no will. There's no information about what financial assets may be available. There's no knowledge about where important papers are kept. There's no directions about what to do about funeral and burial. And there are no directions about what should happen with custody of children or care of elderly parents. And Rita and I had a discussion about that the other day. It's so important that it's on paper and someone has that information about what will happen to children, minor children. And also, I'm a caregiver of a mother who is about to turn 90. And if something happens to me, I had to think about who would care for her if I'm no longer around. And so those are just major, major issues that we tend to put off thinking about because we want to believe that everything's going to be fine. But just in case, what if? Those awful what if questions, okay? So these families really need help in seeking estate planning as part of their overall financial wellness planning. And that's the one thing that I really want to get across today, that estate planning is definitely, it's vital that it's part of your overall financial wellness planning. So what are some of the things that you really need to start including in terms of your estate planning? Well, one of the first things is a durable power of attorney. And this is a legal document that gives one person the power to act for another person. And a DPOA may be temporary, or it could be permanent, depending on the illness or the disability that the person has. And it also helps to cover when the subject of the DPOA is unable to be present to sign necessary documents. And so that power of attorney allows the designated person to make decisions about the person's property, about their finances, and about their medical care. And a durable power of attorney remains in effect as long as the person is unable to act personally. Now, the other part of this, and there's really two parts. One would be making sure that there's a healthcare power of attorney that's in place. And this allows the designated person in the family or a friend to speak to health providers and make decisions on your behalf concerning your health, medical condition, treatment, and care. And it's really important for this. And this is another thing that I point out for members of the LGBTQ community in particular, is that sometimes, depends on the laws in your state. You really need to make sure that you have those forms and that they're filed, whether it needs to be with a court or with an attorney who can step in and make sure that your wishes are known, that this is the person that should handle, those delicate issues for you. The second one is the financial power of attorney. And this gives the person the financial power to act on your behalf. And so this document allows a designated person to manage financial affairs, such as paying your bills, signing checks, filing tax returns, mailing and depositing Social Security check. This is extremely important if you're taking care of an elderly person or someone on disability, and managing investment accounts. And I really see these two, the the healthcare power of attorney and the financial power of attorney going hand in hand, because when I had my power of attorney written up and told my nephew, this is what I want you to do, and I'm putting you down as the power of attorney, and I said, if you help me with the medical care, making sure that everything's done and I recover, don't have me coming out and finding out my house is in foreclosure because nobody paid my bills. Okay. So, they need to have that power to make sure that all these things are being taken care of on your behalf or on the behalf of someone else. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next poll. I'm really enjoying these polls today, Rita.
Good. Me too.
Okay. Let me, okay. This particular poll, and this is next to the last one. What is the percentage of older Americans who have a will, advanced healthcare directive, healthcare POA, and a financial POA in place? Okay. So do you think it's 15%, 21%, 34%, or 40%? And that's having all of these, everything that they need already in place. Okay. Great numbers. Okay, we're at 72%, climbing. We're almost there. And this is for older Americans who have everything in place. Okay, we'll give one more split second. Okay, let's go ahead and close the poll now. We have about 82%. Okay, and share the results. Okay, so the choice is 15%, 21%, 34%, and 40%. Actually, according to the research that I've seen, it's 40% of older Americans who have a will, advanced healthcare directive, and a financial power of attorney already in place. So 40% is really good, but it still means 60% of Americans out there still lack this, having these items in place. And, the older we get, the more we need to make sure that certain things are in place for us in terms of what we need to do. So what is it that people need to do to make sure to get this, and where do people start? Well, this is a chart that I absolutely love because I've used this for myself and checked things off as well. And Rita, I believe that this is going to be a handout as well.
Right. It was
Okay.
good not to share that way.
Okay, wonderful. So you'll be able to download this, and this is something just kind of keep in mind because there's some things on here that I've completed, some things I've experienced that's a real need and you don't think about it, and some things that I'm still looking at and putting in place for myself as well. So let's just quickly go down this checklist. List your finances, your current income sources, and money's going into retirement account. When I was doing this to make sure my nephews, can get a handle in case anything happens to me, I kept leaving things out and had to go back and kind of think about all these different accounts of, where pockets of money may be that they need to know about. So this is a great way of really getting a handle on your assets. What do you have available, and put them in order, because I'm a true Gemini. My spirit's all over the place. So sometimes it's hard for me to just sit down and concentrate on this, but it made me start thinking, okay, I really need to do, as Rita said, spend time with my money. And so I started doing that, and this has been really helpful. Next, list your up-to-date social media accounts. I listed out all my social media accounts, my user ID, and my password, just in case they need to come in and get handle and get in terms of that. Also, related to my bills as well is really important. List any PO boxes, and this is important because remember when my oldest brother passed away, he was an accountant who worked out of his home, and when he passed away, I was trying to sell his estate, and I know we lost money because he had checks coming in, but we didn't have his key to the safe deposit box. We knew where the safe deposit box was, but without, the documentation that we needed, going months and through probate. By the time we got to it, the post office had, discontinued his box. So we'll never know what was in his mailbox. So think about that and listing that and asking questions about that and how to gain access to that if needed. Identify mortgage lender, the amount owed, and rental payments that's due on a monthly basis. List of insurance policies, list investment accounts, identify beneficiaries, and I'm going to get back to that in a second as well, because that's really, really important. Obtain a copy of the loved one's birth certificate, marriage certificates, driver's license, passport, and social security card. So you have all that information in case you need it. Write or make notes for obituaries and funeral service. I know a lot of people don't want to think about this and touch it with a 10-foot pole, but it is something that could be really helpful later on and take some stress off the loved ones that's left behind. Decide what you or your loved ones will want done with your remains. Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? I've had some really interesting conversations in my family because I'm the only one who's decided they want to be cremated. And so, I could go on a whole nother webinar about some of the comments and reactions I've gotten to that. So I also think about a savings account for immediate funeral and burial needs. This is really important, and it ties in with this next one of asking your bank about payable on death or transfer on death accounts. One of the things that I recognize as being an executor of an estate is that there are costs that occurred with that. It may be travel costs. If the person died and they're in another state, it could be fees that may have to be paid, taxes coming due, all those things. So think about, ways that maybe some funds can be set aside for that executor so that all of that's not coming out of his or her pocket. Shop for funeral homes and burial sites. A lot of people don't like doing this ahead of time either, but I'm engaged with this with, my mother. As I stated, she's 90. While I'm doing it for her, I'm also thinking about what I want in terms of this. And, so we already know that funerals can run up to about $9,000. Burial sites, let me tell you, that can run anywhere from $500 to $5,000, okay, just to bury someone in that plot of land, okay? So that's really important, and that's something that often gets left out when we're considering that cost of death and dying. And going through personal possessions and downsize and clutter, get rid of things so that, people won't have to come in and try to figure out and going through mountains of paper, trying to find the most important documents. So I'm trying to set those aside. So if nephews need to come in and take care of certain things, they know where to find them. And I love this piece that's called Swiss death cleansing, where people at a certain age start downsizing and getting rid of clutter. So people who may come in after them won't have to deal with all of that, okay? And then decide who will receive personal items for mementos. You may want to write that out and have a written and structured plan for the care of your children and elderly family members for whom the deceased was actively caring for at the time of death. It is so important. And I know a lot of people who have this church ceremony where they get godparents of their children. That needs to be documented somewhere. Are these people that you really want to take care of your children? Where are they going to go? Who's going to care for them? And you need to have all these other things in place for them as well, just so that people will know where your assets are and can put those into a trust for the children. So, there's a lot of decision making that unfortunately we tend to have that go undone. And so we need to take care of that. And the second document that Rita's also going to put into a handout, I think is very important, because once your will's done, you really do need to there are documents that you really need to revisit every year or two to make sure that they're current. And so some of that will be the guardianship documents. Maybe children age out and won't need the guardianship, which children, may need need to have someone listed. Are there other children who are now adults? Do you want those adult children to take care of the minor children? What happens with the guardianship? You need to have your healthcare power of attorney reviewed, your financial power of attorney. Do you want that same person to be still over your estate? Or what happens if that person is no longer around? that that person may become too ill or deceased and no longer there. So that'll make your healthcare power of attorney mute. What I did with mine was that I listed an older nephew, and I stated in my will that if that nephew cannot carry out these duties, then it's going to go to the second nephew. Okay, so those are kinds of things that you can do to just kind of make sure that you're staying as current as possible. Make a living will or advance directive that's telling people what you want done, you know, and particularly in terms of, you know, certain healthcare issues. Make out and make it known, do not resuscitate or do not incubate orders. I was asked this by the attorney when I was doing the will, and I'd always told people, oh, you know, I don't want to linger, you know, do not resuscitate. And when she asked me, because she was going to put in the will, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be on paper. So you may want to revisit that from time to time to make sure that that's still your desire, okay? You may want to review that last will and testament. You know, definitely make sure that you keep your beneficiaries up to date. There were a couple of I think it was insurance policies. I had my two brothers on as my beneficiaries. Both of them are passed. So I had to completely change that in terms of who would be my beneficiaries in case something happened to me. Okay, you want to make sure your organ donation is up to date, your life insurance policies, any trust related to family property and assets is passed down through generations. Here in the South, we have a lot of family land, and brothers and sisters, and it's supposed to pass down from one generation to another. You all may want to revisit that to make sure that that land section off, who's paying for the taxes, you know, just make sure that that's in your trust, and that your children put those in their will as well, so that knowledge about that property passes from one generation to another. And then there's a personal property memorandum. Just write out who you want to receive, you know, what items, personal items that belong to you. And then the digital assets memorandum, which is really important because social media that may be personal, but a lot of people have social media that's tied to their business or other financial interests. Make sure that that information is there as well. Okay, so I hope I didn't run through this too quickly, but I love the fact that Rita keyed in on this, and will make these handouts that people can keep and use it for yourself, but also use it for family, friends, clients. Everybody needs to have this information. Okay. And so the prevalence of estate planning documents by race, it's important to acknowledge that some groups, particularly people of color, may not be as advanced in terms of looking and thinking about this. And if you look at this chart from 2020 and 2021, African Americans, there was a slight increase between 2020 and 2021, primarily because of COVID, of their making sure that they started their estate planning process. Hispanic Americans were more advanced towards this than African Americans, which, as an African American, I was a little surprised by that. But, you know, it's great to see that not only were they a little bit ahead, they even increased their estate planning process as well. And for white Americans, it remained the same between 2020 and 2021. Okay. All right. I think we still have a moment or two. I can launch this last poll that I have. And this particular poll is, what is the percentage of people who don't believe their assets are worth enough to worry about estate planning? What is the percentage of people who don't believe that their assets are worth enough to worry about estate planning? Okay, I love to see this ticking up of these numbers. Okay, this is great. We're almost, okay, we're just passing 70% of you responding. And this one may be a little trickier to get a handle on in terms of that percentage of the people who say, I don't have enough. You know, why should I even worry about it? Okay. Okay, we're almost at 80%. Okay, let's go ahead and close the poll now and share this result in terms of what is the percentage of people who don't believe their assets are worth enough to worry about estate planning. And the answer here is 49%. So 40 of you, most of you got this correct. 49% of people do not believe that they have enough to worry about estate planning. And I'm really hopeful that, everything I've shared with you today will help you help others change their minds about what it means in terms of estate planning, how important this whole process really is, okay? So I'm gonna hide this and get to my last couple of slides. So hopefully we'll have a little time for some Q&A. Okay, just taking into account the cultural and economic considerations around death and estate planning. And this is really around helping individuals and families think about cultural norms that they want observed and placed in their will or final directions. And these issues around the remains can be related to culture and religious norms. So we have to take that into account, as you're working with families around that, or having families think about, how important those cultural and religious norms are. That's one of the reasons why my family has been so rocked by the idea that I want to be cremated, where they all want to be buried. And they're like, we can't visit you. And I'm like, I'm not in a cemetery anyway, so that doesn't bother me. But, I have a special reason why I want to be cremated. And so in my will, I have that listed out in terms of what I want done. And so I think it's important that people are able to express that and make sure that their wishes are fulfilled. And so, and may want to look in terms of who to pass on certain family items, property and income, may also be around family traditions or cultural norms, who inherits, that property, and make sure that that is taken into consideration. And for those caring for both children and their parents, and I know I've kind of harped on this several times in this presentation, but, these are important considerations and should be made to ensure that the final wishes are inclusive of how those family members should be cared for after death as well. And so this last slide, I just want to say, I'm from Louisiana, and I've always loved the idea of jazz funerals, because it's, I love in the African-American tradition, we generally try to refer to funerals as homegoings. And so, and, I've been to funerals where it's been a true celebration of that person's life. And so that's what, you want, to hopefully have families be able to concentrate on and not be so overburdened about the financial trauma that they're going through in terms of how we're going to bury, the family member, the bills that's coming due. We don't know what to do with, all their assets. Those are things that really could be taken care of months, years ahead of time, and so that when that time comes, you can think about all the great things about what that person left behind and not dwell on, what has to take place from here on. Okay. So I just want to thank Rita, who's always been, she's a mentor, she's a hero, she's one of my sheroes in terms of this, because I just love her and I love the Center on Financial Social Work. I want to thank Leah too, who's, I affectionately call the other Olga as well. And I just want to thank you all for tuning in too and being part of this today, and let me share this with you all. And hopefully, it's not something that was heavy, depressing, but, I see this as something that can be really joyful in terms of thinking about, your assets and helping to pass on generational wealth as well. So I'll turn this back over to Rita.
I have to say, that's a very interesting comment you just made, because it was joyful. It was not depressing. That was pretty special, Olga. Thank you so much. And people stayed with us for the whole presentation, and you saw how much of a response your Q&A. Now, Olga has done 3 of these, and I'm going to work with her to get her to do another one soon. Thank you so much. So before we take your Q&A, and if you have questions, go ahead and put them in, because we have some time. I just wanted everyone to know that this is a reminder that no one chooses to have money problems, but most people do. I have decided lately to add some certain important pieces to my presentations as reminders for everyone before we finish. And I want you to consider that while no one can or needs to know everything about money, everyone does need to know certain things about money. And if we really want and care about financial health and wellness for our own futures and for our clients' financial futures, we need to stop raising generation after generation of financially illiterate men and women. And we do that by preparing our children for the real world, by teaching them about money. So I want to mention, in case you did not know, that we now have a partner program because so many of our students and graduates refer their colleagues to the financial social work certification. We are demonstrating our appreciation with a $50 referral fee to those doing the referral and a $50 discount to the person making the purchase. It's a very simple process. You have to be logged in on our website to see the $ next to the shopping cart. And when you press on that, you will be able to copy the link and share it directly. This is what it looks like right here. Share it with your friends through mail, social media. You receive $50 and your colleague gets a $50 discount. So we launched a new ebook last month, The 5 Secrets of Financial Health and Wellness. And that is very much available along with quite a few other ebooks from our website. I wanted you to know that next month's webinar I'll be doing is on the cycle of financial self-abuse. And for Social Work Month in March, no, I'm doing the March Social Work Month on the cycle of financial self-abuse. And for Financial Literacy Month, we have the Director of Education from Experian speaking on credit score empowerment for you and your clients. So we have lots of good programs coming up. We also have essays on the website written by our graduates, if you want to read some of those. Our certification is self-study and self-paced. We do have thousands of graduates, as I said, across the country and around the world. Our students have 6 months to complete the certification. It includes all of the materials plus the final exam. And it includes 20 CEUs from NASW. And it also includes our financial social work professional network meeting on Zoom the third Thursday of every month, and our group on Facebook and LinkedIn. So while we did make a handout for you, it is not available for you to download right now. Leah, who is our All Things Tech, and if you've been chatting with anyone, it is Leah, who is with us from Russia today, where she is visiting. And we appreciate her and her being here. She is going to share it with everyone when she sends you the recording of the video. So watch for that, because we captured some of those really important pieces that were in Olga's training today. So, Leah, do we have any questions or comments?
Yes, we have. First question, how does race, poverty, or culture affect the process to consider this kind of planning?
Olga, you want to take that one?
Yeah, and I'm really glad that to start off with that question, because that's something that I think that comes up quite a bit in terms of if you're working with low income, or as I described, low wealth families, to help them to see that, it's really not about the amount of money that you have, but it is planning for what should happen within the family in case that breadwinner is no longer around. Who's going to take the children? Trying to think about setting up, some assets to the best of their abilities, for their care. But it's just knowing what's going to happen. Most people have assets that they do not consider. And as I stated in the presentation, they don't think their assets are really worth anything. But those are things that may be, particularly if they're small minor children, that may need to be sold so that maybe that income can go and help, another family member who may be taking care of the children. So I just think that there's ways that people need to think about this process and think not just in terms of, I don't have enough money or I do not have property, but if you're in a family and if you have anything on your personal, in terms of assets, you need to think about that as well. All of that could be part of it, and getting people to think about it, because I think of this as a motivator. Okay, I think that this is something that helps motivate people to think about, if something happens, I need to figure out how to either increase my assets or to outline and do a little research about what they need to do. But when Rita and I were talking about this, one of the primary things that you have as an asset, something in terms of passing down, the children, and also thinking about care of elderly people. If people are in some similar situations I am, talking among family members about what's going to happen, who's going to take care of that person.
Okay, thank you.
I think, just let me add that I think that low wealth clients and many Americans don't feel that they do have those assets and that they need these documents, and reminding them, what do you want to happen with the children, is a great way to engage them to begin to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that the statistics you shared, Olga, demonstrate the differences in culture and race and how people approach us, but not nearly enough people in any race or culture or group are prepared for this, and
Absolutely,
they need to be. Thanks for the great information, Olga. Any other questions, Leah?
Yes. Should we list accounts and all the things in the checklist as additional info in our will?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, should we list accounts and all the things in the checklist as additional info in our will?
Yeah, because I think the different documents that you can have, some of them would definitely need to go into the will. Some may need to go into a trust if there's property that you're passing down in family, or that's passed down from one generation to another. But like the durable power of attorney, the healthcare and the financial one, that's definitely should be on that checklist, should be taken consideration, because you never know what may happen, and you need someone that you can trust to make sure that they're taking care of those issues, and writing out and making sure that someone has a copy of your wishes in terms of what should happen with, like, furniture and dishes, and particularly items that may be passed down in the family. All of those are really important pieces that you may not consider important right now. But having had a brother who was a minister who resided over funerals, he said, Olga, it's amazing how, the little things people will argue about after someone passes that they want. And I bet that person never thought about, this will cause a breach in the family over those. So I just think it's a good idea, falling down that checklist and thinking about and using it as a guide in terms of what needs to take place and who you want to have what.
Okay, thank you.
I thought they might also be asking in that question whether you need to list all of your account numbers. Was
Oh,
that
yes, definitely. Definitely.
you need it to do an inventory type?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's in the certification, but for those for everyone else, I'm sure there are forms that you can get. But yes, people need to know where your accounts are, what
Exactly.
banks,
Exactly.
and they should be listed if you want them to have access. So I just thought that could be part of that question.
Thank you for catching that because I didn't catch that part of it. But yes, I identified it. I identified all of my accounts, the numbers. Make sure they have the names, but also to go online with the user ID number and the passwords. All that information there, so they can follow up in case I can't do that. So they can have a true picture of what's going on.
Okay, thank you. Everyone talks about wills. Can you talk about trusts and how to get one done?
Oh, a
Question
trust.
from Rashad.
Yeah. I just included because I have some family property that I inherited from my dad. And my father was very adamant that land should stay in the family. Well, I never married and never had kids. So I had to make sure of what would happen with that. And so, speaking to my attorney, we develop a trust. And that trust, outlines what should happen to that family property once I'm no longer here, who inherits it. And then I was very concerned that, after my two nephews, that generation, that gets passed down to their children. And so one of the things I've had my nephews do is they're starting this will process too, because Auntie's been harping on this long enough. It's not just with you all. There's some friends I'm sure are walking the other way when they see me coming because they know I'm going to ask about wills and trusts. But they are putting linking the trust into their will so that their children will also know, so that gets passed down in the family. So I would say the best thing, this is something that I would highly recommend that you work with an attorney because laws differ in different states. Coming from Louisiana, the laws there are very different from other states. So it's acknowledging what's happening and the fact that trust will be on file, so that after it passes down in the family, I also said if no one else in the family wants that property, it's going to transfer to a university. So it's very important that you kind of think as far out as possible when you're developing that trust and making sure that certain things are involved in that. And I just want to add this real quickly because I know we're about to run out of time. But part of that trust, if you're setting up for children and you know you have a child with a disability, think how that trust is going to impact on any disability payments that they may be receiving, and so that you won't knock them out of the ability to keep those assets coming, but they're taken care of in other ways too. So that's why I think you want to work with an attorney.
I think that some of these documents you can purchase in a store, but I do think if possible, you need to discuss them with an attorney to make sure you have the most current and the best and what's right for your particular situation. We are over time already. I would like to again thank Dr. Osby for this wonderful presentation. I'd like to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy days. And I know you must be really happy to have this information. And I hope we'll see you back here in the future for our monthly free webinar. Thanks, everybody. You can watch for the recording and the handout in the next few days. All right. Bye now.